They just can't have any contact with her. But it seemed like several of them were concerned about the fact that an excused juror is here, and again, it's juror 901. These are public proceedings. She has every right to be here if she wishes to be here. I don't have a problem at all with her being here. But I just want to make sure that the jurors understand that there's nothing wrong with that, just as long as they follow the advisement. Is there any objection from the people?
No, sir.
Mr. King, from the defense?
No, Your Honor, and I have no objection to you telling them that it's a public proceeding and there's nothing wrong with her being here as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's bring the jury in, please.
What?
Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Welcome back, members of the jury. A couple of things before we proceed. Number one is, a few of you may have noticed, perhaps more than a few of you, that one of the jurors who has been excused from the trial is present in the courtroom. Juror 901 is here watching the proceedings. These are public proceedings, and so there's nothing wrong with her being here in attendance. She knows about my advisement to you that you cannot have any contact with her or any of the other excused jurors. And I have no doubt that she will abide by my advisement. And so I just wanted to make that clear for everyone. The second thing is, I think I mentioned yesterday that it is likely we're going to take a few days off next week. And most of you seemed happy about that, but I also understand that that feeling may not be a feeling that all of you share. There may be different reasons for that. I just wanted you to know we're not taking time off just to take time off. There's actually, there are some things that we can't avoid and require us to take some time. And there are things we need to work on, for example, jury instructions. The instructions that I'm going to be giving you at the end in writing that I've mentioned to you before. And so the lawyers and I are going to be taking advantage of that time when you're not here to do some work anyway. And so at some point we were going to have to take some time to do that, and it just made sense to do it now if we could. And so we're going to be working on that to some extent. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So I just wanted you to know it's unavoidable. It's not that we're just all taking 3 days off and going on a trip or something and taking a vacation. All right. With that, at the end of the first part of the afternoon session, you had submitted some questions for Dr. Feinstein. And before we proceed, I want to remind Dr. Feinstein that you are still under oath. And I want to remind you, members of the jury, that the court has admitted the testimony of Dr. Feinstein only for a limited purpose. You may consider this testimony only as to the issues raised by the defendant's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. You shall not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Does everyone understand that? And everyone saying yes or nodding their head yes. Great. All right, doctor, the jury has submitted some questions, and based on the rules of evidence and other applicable rules of law, I have determined that they are appropriate, and so I am going to ask you the questions now. The first question is, have you had in your years of practice a misdiagnosis with a patient that then the patient became violent?
No.
The next question is, if you were aware that he had a disregard and or dislike of Dr. Fenton, why didn't you see Mr. Holmes without her presence?
We were exploring that transfer, and you do that together, you come to a group decision, and so at the point at which Dr. Fenton and Mr. Holmes agreed that his care should transfer to me, that's when I would start to see him alone.
The next question is, what are the side effects of Risperdal?
Risperdal can cause weight gain. It can cause mild sedation. It can cause a spectrum of side effects such as a tremor. It can cause a restlessness such that you have to move and walk. It has the potential to produce a symptom where your body gets rigid and your muscles get tight and you develop high fevers. It can cause some light movements of fingers and toes against your will. It can cause weight gain. It can also potentially cause gynecomastia, where your breasts develop and produce milk. All of those side effects are relatively infrequently, but those are possible side effects.
All right, the next question is, if someone comes to you with homicidal thoughts / ideations, is it common for the patient to ask for help in getting rid of those homicidal thoughts?
Often that's very common, especially in that group of patients where those thoughts are disturbing to them. There are a group of patients where the thoughts are not disturbing to them and they may or may not want help.
The next question is as follows. Does a person have to meet certain criteria for an involuntary medical hold, or can a psychiatrist put a patient on a medical hold because of a gut feeling?
There's very specific mental health hold rules in Colorado and all the other states that require a specific target, a specific time frame to be able to put somebody on mental health hold. And the criterion is danger to self, danger to other, or gravely disabled. So you need those criterion to be able to put somebody on a mental health hold, and we never felt that Mr. Holmes met those criteria.
You may have answered part of this question, but I'll ask it and then you let me know if you have or have not answered all of it. The question is, what is the full list of criteria that must be met to place someone on a 72-hour mental health hold, and is it subjective?
It's, just to clarify, it's danger to self, danger to others, or gravely disabled. And those are always best clinical judgment that is aided, if you use them, by some rating scales like the VASA scale that I described to inform and standardize your judgment. But it's always about clinical judgment. It's never about a black and white or a yes and no or a definitive answer.
The next question is, if you had concerns with James Holmes's homicidal thoughts, yet he didn't meet the criteria for involuntary 72-hour hold, did you ask him if he would go into a hospital willingly?
I don't believe we asked him. I didn't ask him that question. I'm not sure whether Dr. Fenton did or not.
And the last question is, you indicated in your testimony that paucity of speech, stilted speech, and inability to communicate are symptoms of a mental disorder. What disorder or disorders are you referring to?
It may be a symptom of a mental disorder. It's not always. The spectrum would be personality disorders, in which schizoid personality, schizotypal personality, maybe even paranoid personality disorders might be personality disorders where you see a paucity of thought. Other schizophrenic spectrum diagnosis, schizophrenia proper, schizoaffective disorder. Some of the autistic spectrum disorders, Asperger's autistic spectrum disorders, might also reveal a paucity of thought as well as developmental delays. Folks with low IQ or have had brain damage of one sort or another may show a paucity of thought as well. So it's a pretty wide differential diagnosis.
All right, are there any follow-up questions, Mr. Bruckler?
Yes, Your Honor. Doctor, in your experience, and one of the questions had to do with whether or not a voluntary hospitalization was offered. In your experience, someone who turns down free follow-on health care, is that someone who, in your experience, is likely to take you up on something more restrictive like a voluntary hospitalization?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained. You can ask a different question. I know what you're getting at, but sustain us to the form of the question.
What factors might you have considered in not offering a voluntary hospitalization as an extra step beyond what happened?
I think if outpatient is the least restrictive form of therapy, it's totally voluntary, totally up to the patient, and if they don't accept that, it wouldn't make sense to offer a more restrictive kind of therapy for a patient.
I want to ask you, too, as you went through the criterion that you described for an involuntary hold, you talked about dangerousness to self or others. Is that a someday could be dangerousness or an imminent gonna happen dangerousness?
It's an imminent gonna happen within a matter of minutes or days.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any follow-up questions from you, Ms. Higgs?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out my notes. Doctor, you talked about this idea that some people come in with homicidal thoughts and they ask for help with them, correct?
Yes?
Okay. Now, when Mr. Holmes came in to see Margaret Roth on the very first date of his intake appointment, he talked to her about the symptoms he was having, correct?
Yes?
And one of the things she asked him about was other symptoms after he talked about the anxiety and the public speaking, correct?
Yes?
And he said he didn't want to say, as she would have to report him, but he says he wants to kill other people, correct?
That's what the note said, yes.
So when he initially came for his treatment, one of the symptoms he did report was his homicidal ideation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with regard to a voluntary hold or actually an involuntary hold, it's possible that when somebody goes into the hospital that they may actually decide at that point, I'm going to actually take this antipsychotic medication. I'm going to take this thing that's going to help me. That's possible, isn't it?
Your Honor, it calls for speculation.
Sustained.
With regard to the emergency statute, you said that it has to be imminent within minutes or days. Is that right?
Yes.
What the statute actually reads, Dr. Feinstein, is that when a person appears to have a mental illness and as a result of such mental illness appears to be in imminent danger to others or to himself or herself, or appears to be gravely disabled, then a person such as yourself can then effect a 72-hour hold, correct?
Yep.
The statute doesn't say imminent within minutes, correct?
Right.
The statute doesn't even say imminent within days, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, may Dr. Feinstein be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection?
No, sir.
Dr. Feinstein, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Detective Craig Apple.
solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, please be seated.
Judge, before we begin, we're calling Detective Apple for just a limited purpose. He may be recalled later in the trial.
Okay, and Detective, you've testified before, but could you please state your name for the record again, since it's been a while?
Craig John Apple, Craigjohnappel.
All right, Mr. Edson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Apple, are you the lead detective for the Aurora Police Department in this case?
Yes, I am.
Were you a detective with the Aurora Police Department back on July 20th, 2012?
Yes.
As part of your duties and background in becoming a detective, have you had an opportunity to have some experience with firearms?
Yes.
As the lead detective in this case, have you had the duties and responsibility to review all of the evidence and documents and information associated with this case?
Yes.
If I could please have People's Exhibit 4506. It's already been admitted, Your Honor.
Okay?
We could scroll into the top there. Detective, do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is this?
Looks like it is a Gander Mountain sales receipt from May 22nd of 2012.
And what was the time of this particular purchase?
4:34 p.m.
And have you been present during all testimony to date at trial?
Most of it, yes.
Okay. Were you here during testimony from another witness from Gander Mountain related to this particular exhibit?
Yes.
Do you recall who was associated with this exhibit as far as the purchaser?
Yes.
Who was that?
The defendant, James Holmes.
Okay, thank you. You can take that down. Did you personally interview the defendant previously? You personally had an interaction with him, is that correct?
Yes, twice.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
This will be People's Exhibit 532A. I've handed you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 532A. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
What is that exhibit?
It's a DVD, real short clip of a Gander Mountain surveillance video from May 22nd, 2012.
Did you yourself view that surveillance video?
Yes, I did.
Is there any markings on that particular exhibit that are from you?
Yes, I placed my initials and the date I viewed it, which was this morning.
Did you observe anyone you recognize on that surveillance video?
Yes, I did.
Who did you recognize?
The defendant.
That would be James Holmes?
Yes.
Were you able to view the time that's at least reflected on that particular video?
Yes.
Did that time closely reflect in time to the time on the Gander Mountain receipt you just testified to?
Yes, it did.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
This is People's Exhibit 361A. Sir, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I do.
What is that exhibit?
Your Honor, I neglected to do this before, but I'm not going to neglect this time. I don't think that it's appropriate for this witness to talk about what's on this video until this video has actually been introduced with any specificity.
Judge, if I may?
Yes.
I'm laying foundation for its admission.
All right, lay foundation to the extent you can without going into the contents of the video.
Understood. Without getting into the contents, what in general is People's Exhibit 361A?
Surveillance video from Gander
Objection,
Mountain.
Your Honor. I don't think that he can talk about where it's specifically from.
Sustained.
People's Exhibit 361A is that surveillance video.
Yes, it is.
Did you yourself view that surveillance video?
Yes, I did.
Did you recognize anyone from that surveillance video?
Yes, I did.
Who did you recognize?
James Holmes.
If I could please have People's Exhibit 2772. It's a photograph already admitted into evidence. Sir, what are we looking at here?
We are looking at the Remington 870 12-gauge shotgun that was used in this shooting on a theater floor.
What is the caliber of ammunition for that particular weapon?
12-gauge.
We could have People's Exhibit 2190 also already admitted. What weapon are we looking at here?
This is a M&P, or Smith & Wesson M&P rifle, 223 caliber, found outside the theater in the rear door.
We could have People's Exhibit 2156, please. What are we looking at here?
This would be the Glock pistol used in this shooting. It's 40 caliber with a sighting accessory on the bottom of the slide.
We could have People's Exhibit 2149 also previously admitted. What are we looking at here?
This is a 40 caliber Glock pistol found in the front passenger door side.
We can take that down, thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the court reporter to retrieve some evidence?
Yes.
Sir, I've handed you what's been previously admitted as People's Exhibit 706. What is this exhibit?
This would be the M&P, Smith & Wesson M&P rifle used in this incident.
Have you previously viewed this rifle prior to your testimony today?
Yes, I actually packaged it and secured it in this box.
Can you observe whether there is a sight or a mount on this particular exhibit and the weapon inside this exhibit?
Yes, attached to the rifle on the top rail system is a Vortex strike fire aiming system, and attached to that is a clamp that allows it to attach to the top of the rifle. This AR platform is called the rail system.
Is that also known as a mount?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, one moment, please.
Yes.
I have nothing further, Judge. Thank you.
All right, any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. Call your next witness, please.
Jose Lopez.
Good afternoon. Could I have you raise your right hand for me so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Could you please be seated? Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
My name is Jose Lopez. My name is spelled Jose. Middle name is Felis. Last name is Lopez.
Mr. Edson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, do you also go by the first name of Joe?
I do.
How are you currently employed?
I'm a bench store manager for Gander Mountain.
What is a bench store manager?
I'm basically a store manager in training. I've completed the training, so I'm a bench store manager.
Were you employed with Gander Mountain back on July 1st, 2012?
I was.
Were you employed by Gander Mountain back on July 20th, 2012?
Yes, I was.
Have you been employed continuously with Gander Mountain since that time period?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Edson, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's something we have to take up, so let's take a short break, folks. Members of the jury, please keep in mind that my advisements apply during the break. So let's take a 10 or 15 minute break, okay? Thank you. And we'll have the witness step out as well, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that we are now outside the presence of the jury and outside the presence of Mr. Lopez, the witness. I received a note from juror number 527 indicating that he knows this witness. So I marked the form, by the way, as question form number 194. Let's bring him in. This is number 527. The record should reflect that juror number 527 is now present in the courtroom. Have a seat. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
How are you doing?
Good.
It's a loud mic.
It is.
The reason I brought you in is because I want to follow up on the form that you submitted indicating that you apparently know this witness, Jose Lopez. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. How do you know Mr. Lopez?
Friend of my brother-in-law. We played fantasy football together.
Okay. How well do you know him?
We communicate throughout the football season, so we've hung out a couple times.
How would you describe your relationship with him? Do you think he's an acquaintance or more of a friend or something else?
Between acquaintance and friend.
Okay. And approximately how long have you known him?
Been in this league for 8 years.
When was the last time you had any communication with him?
Last fall.
And
We're also Facebook friends too. So
when was the last time you communicated with him through Facebook?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Was it before the trial or after the trial
It was
started?
probably before the trial.
Are you planning on having any further communications with him before the football season?
No.
No? Okay. And so that would be sometime when?
Usually it's after Labor Day.
Okay.
I think right around Labor Day.
All right. Anything about your relationship with this witness that you think would affect your ability to be a fair and impartial juror in this trial?
No.
Anything about that relationship that you think would affect your ability to assess the credibility of this witness in the same way that you assess the credibility of all other witnesses?
No.
Anything about your relationship that in any way would affect your ability to follow my instructions, including the instruction on how you go about assessing credibility, the credibility of the witnesses?
No.
Do you think that anything about that relationship will influence you or affect you in any way in deliberations or in making any of the decisions in this trial?
No.
Do you have any concerns at all?
No.
Let me have you step out for just a moment, okay? Okay, the record should reflect that juror number 527 has stepped out of the courtroom. Any additional questions that the people would like me to ask?
No, sir, but I appreciate his candor in coming forward immediately.
Okay. Any requests that the people are making to the court right now, Mr. Bruckler?
No, sir.
All right. Mr. King, do you have any additional questions that you would like me to ask?
No, not at this time.
And any requests of the court at this time?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's bring the jury back, please. Actually, Ms. Robinson, can we have juror number 527 back, please? Can everybody be seated? The record should reflect that we remain outside the presence of the jury and outside the presence of the witness. The record should reflect that juror number 527 is back in the courtroom. Sir, thank you for your patience. I'm going to ask that you not have any contact with Mr. Lopez until after the proceedings.